Poor Waitress fired for kindness, but the CEO was secretly watching. The warm aroma of coffee and fresh bread drifted through the air as evening settled over Willowbrook Cafe, a small, cozy shop nestled in the corner of a quiet London street. The faint hum of chatter and clinking cups filled the room, while servers glided between tables with graceful precision. Behind the counter, Emma Wells wiped her flour-dusted hands on her apron and let out a tired sigh. Her shift was nearly over. She could feel the ache in her feet from standing all day, her back stiff from bending over trays and coffee machines. At home, her little brother Liam was waiting for her. Rent was past due, and the pantry was almost empty. Emma hadn't eaten since morning, choosing instead to save what little money she had left. As she cleared a table near the front window, a flicker of movement caught her eye. Outside, in the biting January cold, stood a boy no older than 7. His jacket was too thin for the weather, his cheeks raw and pink from the wind. He pressed his hands against the glass, eyes locked on a half-eaten sandwich left behind on a plate. "You." Emma's heart clenched. She looked around. The manager was in the back on the phone, and the only other staff was busy refilling the pastry case. Quietly, she placed the tray she was carrying on the counter and glanced at the food warmer. A freshly made bowl of tomato soup, ordered and then canceled, sat waiting to be thrown out. She hesitated for only a moment before sliding it onto a tray. Adding a bread roll and a napkin, she slipped out the side door, her breath clouding in the frosty air. "Hey there," she said softly, kneeling down beside the boy. "Are you hungry?" The boy nodded, his eyes wide. "Here," Emma whispered, placing the tray on the bench. "Eat slowly, okay? It's hot." "Thank you," the boy murmured, his small hands trembling as he picked up the spoon. A loud voice cut through the quiet. "What do you think you're doing?" Emma turned, her stomach dropping. Mr. Hargrove, the cafe's manager, stormed out, his face red with anger. "That's theft, Wells! You just gave away food," he barked. "It was going to be thrown out," Emma said calmly, standing her ground. "He's a child. He hasn't eaten all day." "Not your decision to make. Hand me your apron. You're finished here." Emma's hands trembled as she untied her apron and folded it neatly. She glanced at the boy, who had frozen mid-bite, fear in his eyes. "He needed this more than I need this job," she said softly, placing the apron in Mr. Hargrove's hands. Without another word, she turned back to the boy. "It's okay, sweetheart. You can finish." From across the street, a man in a dark coat watched silently. He had seen everything. From across the narrow street, a man leaned casually against a lamppost, his hands tucked into the deep pockets of his dark wool coat. The drizzle from earlier that evening had left the pavement glistening, reflecting the golden glow of the cafe lights. To any passerby, he might have looked like just another tired Londoner waiting for his ride. But Aidan Hart wasn't just anyone. Aidan had returned to England only 2 weeks earlier. As the heir to Hart & Company, a once revered restaurant group that had been losing its charm and reputation in recent years, he had come back to quietly evaluate the company his late mother had loved so dearly. His father's business philosophy, profits first, had stripped away the warmth and humanity that Hart & Company was once known for. But Aidan had come with a different mission. Dressed as an ordinary customer, he had been visiting various branches anonymously, observing staff behavior, testing how much of the company's original spirit remained. That evening, he had chosen Willowbrook Cafe because it was rumored to be one of the better-performing locations, and now he had seen more than he expected. He watched as Emma knelt beside the boy, her blonde hair loose from her bun, her face illuminated by the soft light spilling out of the side door. There was no audience for her actions, no cameras or social media posts. Just instinct. Pure and unguarded compassion. Aidan's gaze narrowed as Mr. Hargrove stormed outside, his voice sharp even across the street. The scene unfolded like a slow-motion reel in Aidan's mind. Emma standing firm, her voice steady despite the tremor in her hands. The boy frozen mid-bite, his spoon clutched tightly. "She needed this more than I need this job," Emma said, her voice barely carrying across the street but still managing to strike something deep within him. Aidan exhaled, a puff of white mist in the cold air. How rare it was to see someone sacrifice what little they had for another person's dignity. As Mr. Hargrove disappeared back into the cafe and Emma crouched once again to comfort the boy, Aiden pushed himself off the lamppost. He left a generous tip on his table inside and walked away into the night, his mind spinning. Whoa, this wasn't about a bowl of soup anymore. For the first time in years, Aiden felt a flicker of something he thought he had lost long ago, hope, and a strange, unfamiliar determination stirred in his chest. 2 days later, the soft sound of jazz drifted from a small diner tucked between a second-hand bookshop and an old tailor shop in South London. The neon sign above the door flickered faintly. Maple Leaf Diner. Inside, the place smelled of frying oil and brewed tea, its worn leather booths patched and repatched over the years. Emma stood behind the counter, her apron a little too large for her slender frame. Her eyes were tired, but determined as she wiped down mugs and organized cutlery. Life hadn't slowed since she'd lost her job at Willowbrook Cafe. Bills still came. Liam still needed dinner and warm clothes. So she had taken whatever work she could find, even if it meant longer hours and less pay. As she moved to refill the sugar jars, the bell above the door chimed. "Evening," said a calm voice. Emma looked up and froze. A man in a dark wool coat stood in the doorway, his tall frame blocking the chill wind outside. His brown hair was slightly tousled from the breeze, and his gray scarf was neatly tied. He didn't look like the usual customers, no hurried glances at phones or muttered orders. He carried himself with the quiet confidence of someone used to being listened to. "Can I help you?" Emma asked warily, her fingers tightening around the jar. "I hope so," the man replied, stepping forward with a warm smile. "My name's Adam. I was told someone here might know about helping with a community food project." Emma frowned slightly. "A community food project?" "Yes." He hesitated, then added, "I saw what you did the other night, at Willowbrook." Emma's stomach dropped. Her fingers froze mid-motion, and her heart skipped a beat. "I'm not here to cause trouble," Adam said quickly, raising his hands. "I just couldn't stop thinking about it. You didn't wait for permission, you just acted. And that's rare." Emma's shoulders stiffened. "Why are you here, really?" "Because I need someone like you," Adam said simply. "I'm helping to start a test project, a small cafe where people in need can eat with dignity. No handouts, no questions asked, just a place where they matter." Emma let out a short, incredulous laugh. "You want me involved because I gave soup to a hungry kid?" "No," Adam said firmly. "I want you involved because you did it knowing it would cost you everything. That kind of instinct can't be taught." She stared at him for a long moment, her lips pressing into a thin line. "What's the catch?" "No catch. Just a 30-day trial. If it doesn't work, no hard feelings." Emma shook her head, unsure whether to laugh or cry. "I have a little brother to care for." Adam's eyes softened. "We can work around your schedule, and we'll make sure there's childcare available." That stopped her cold. No one had ever offered that before. "Why me?" she whispered. "Because," Adam said gently, "you didn't just feed that boy, you gave him a moment of dignity. And that's exactly what this world needs more of." Emma took a deep breath and nodded slowly. 30 days, that's all I can promise." Adam's smile widened slightly. "That's all I'm asking for." The scent of fresh paint and warm bread hung in the air as Emma stood at the center of the new space, a small, sunlit cafe on the corner of a quiet street in Brixton. The hand-painted sign above the door read, "The Common Table." The walls were bare, the chairs mismatched, and the kitchen still smelled faintly of varnish, but there was an energy here, a sense of possibility Emma hadn't felt in years. "Make sure the rice doesn't clump," she said firmly to one of the volunteers, "and keep the soup warm but not boiling. We're feeding people, not rushing them." Adam leaned against the doorway, watching her. Dressed in jeans and a simple sweater, he didn't look anything like the man who had first walked into the Maple Leaf Diner. His sleeves were rolled to the elbows, and his hands were dusted with flour from kneading dough earlier that morning. This was their 3rd week working together, and Adam found himself noticing things he hadn't expected to. The way Emma's voice softened when she spoke to children. The quiet fire in her eyes when she defended a volunteer's mistake from criticism. And the determination in her posture, even after long hours on her feet. By noon, a line had already formed outside. Single mothers with toddlers, elderly men clutching plastic shopping bags, young adults who looked too thin for their age. Emma greeted each person with a smile, her tone gentle but confident. "You're welcome here," she said to an older woman with shaking hands. "Take your time, there's no rush." Inside, families sat at long tables eating lentil stew and cornbread. Children laughed softly, their faces lit with rare delight. Adam moved trays from the kitchen to the dining room, quietly watching Emma work. She had a way of making people feel seen, as if they were more than their circumstances. "You're good at this," Adam said later that evening as they wiped down tables together. Emma shrugged. "It's not hard to be kind." "It's harder than you think," he said. She looked at him then. Her brow furrowed slightly. "You talk like someone who's seen too much of the opposite." "Maybe I have," Adam admitted. For a moment, the air between them felt charged, heavier than it had before. Emma looked away first, focusing on the last crumbs on the table. "Why are you really doing this?" she asked softly. Adam hesitated. "Because somewhere along the way, I forgot what matters. And I think you're helping me remember." Emma didn't reply, but the faintest smile tugged at the corner of her lips. That night, as she locked the cafe doors and stepped into the cool air, she realized she hadn't thought about her lost job at Willowbrook Cafe all day. And for the first time in months, her heart felt a little lighter. How are you feeling about the story so far? I'd really love to know what you think. Did it touch your heart or maybe remind you of something from your own life? Let me know your thoughts in the comments. And while you're at it, tell me, where in the world are you listening from? I'd love to see how far this story travels. 3 weeks later, the aroma of fresh bread and simmering stew still filled the common table. The little cafe had quickly become a haven for people in need. Word had spread. And every day, the line outside grew longer. Volunteers bustled about with trays and ladles, their laughter and chatter blending into the soft jazz playing from a corner speaker. Emma moved through the crowd with ease now. She had grown into her role naturally, directing volunteers, comforting nervous guests, and stepping in wherever help was needed. And somewhere along the way, her partnership with Adam had begun to feel different. She noticed it in small moments, the way he smiled when she laughed, the way his eyes softened when she spoke about her brother, and the way her chest tightened whenever he stood a little too close. But that fragile warmth shattered one rainy Thursday afternoon. Emma was wiping down tables after the lunch rush when her phone buzzed. It was a message from a friend. "Have you seen this?" Attached was a link to an online article. The headline hit her like a punch to the stomach. "Philanthropy or PR stunt? Heir to Hart & Company. Goes undercover at community cafe." Emma's hands went cold. Her chest tightened as she scrolled through photos of Adam. Only, he wasn't Adam. He was Aiden Hart, son of the billionaire who owned Hart & Company, the very chain that had fired her. Her head spun. "You watched me lose my job," she whispered to herself, her voice shaking. The bell above the door chimed. Emma looked up. Aiden stood there, his expression unreadable. "Emma, is it true?" she demanded, holding up her phone. "Yes," he said softly, her fingers curled into fists. "You watched me get fired and said nothing. You let me believe you were just a good man trying to help." "I didn't come here to lie," Aiden said quickly. "I came undercover to see where my family's company had gone wrong. I didn't plan for any of this." "Any of what? Using me to soothe your guilt?" Emma's voice cracked. "Was I just some project for you? Another lesson in humanity for the billionaire's son?" "No!" His voice rose. "You're not a project. You're the reason this cafe even exists. None of this would have happened without you." Emma's shoulders sagged. "But you didn't trust me enough to tell me the truth." "I was scared," Aiden admitted. "Scared of what you'd think if you knew who I really was." She let out a bitter laugh. "Now I know. And I can't do this. Not with you. Not here." Emma untied her apron, folded it carefully, and placed it on the counter. She grabbed her bag and coat without looking back. "Emma, please." But she was already out the door, the bell above her head chiming mournfully as the rain poured down. Aiden stood alone in the cafe, staring at the door she'd just walked through. The smell of stew and fresh bread now felt heavy, suffocating. And for the first time in years, he felt utterly powerless. The polished oak table of the Hart & Company boardroom gleamed under cold fluorescent lights. 12 directors sat stiffly in their leather chairs, their faces ranging from bored to disapproving. At the head of the table, Aiden Hart sat with his hands folded, his jaw tight. Gone was the man in rolled-up sleeves, serving soup at the common table. In his place was the heir to a billion-dollar restaurant empire. Across from him, Malcolm Price, the senior VP of operations and a longtime critic of Aiden's unconventional methods, leaned back in his chair, smug. "I think it's clear," Malcolm said smoothly, his fingers tapping a tablet. "Mr. Hart went undercover in one of our businesses without informing the board, manipulated a vulnerable employee, and used this community cafe as a PR stunt. The press spun it into a feel-good story, but let's call it what it is. Damage control dressed as charity." A murmur rippled around the table. Aiden exhaled slowly and stood, his palms flat against the cool surface of the table. "You're wrong," he said, his voice low but firm. "This wasn't a stunt. And Emma Wells isn't just a vulnerable employee. She's the reason the common table exists. Her instinct, her courage, her commitment, that's what built something worth noticing. Not me, her." Some directors shifted uncomfortably. "She didn't do it for applause or headlines. She didn't ask for anything in return. She simply saw a hungry child and acted, knowing it would cost her everything. That's the kind of heart this company was founded on. And it's what we've lost chasing profit margins." Malcolm smirked. "So you're admitting you compromised company policy over a waitress and a bowl of soup?" Aiden's eyes hardened. "I'm admitting I compromised outdated policies that punish compassion." He straightened, scanning the room. "I failed her. I should have told her the truth from the start. That's on me. But if this board wants someone to blame, blame me. Don't you dare reduce her to a headline. She's not a tool. She's the compass." The room fell silent. Finally, Mr. Whitmore, the chairman, cleared his throat. "Mr. Hart, are you suggesting the common table continue under your leadership?" Aiden shook his head. "Not unless we're willing to uphold its purpose. If this becomes a PR machine, I'll step down." Whitmore leaned back, eyes thoughtful. "We'll deliberate. Expect our decision within the week." Aiden nodded once, gathered his notes, and walked out. That evening, across the city in her small flat, Emma sat on the edge of her couch folding laundry. Her little brother Liam played quietly on the rug, rolling toy cars back and forth. The television murmured in the background until a newscaster's voice cut through. In a bold move today, Aiden Hart defended former employee Emma Wells, previously dismissed for feeding a hungry child. His statement to the board has gone viral. Emma froze as a clip played. "She's not a tool. She's the compass." Her hands trembled as she set down a shirt. For the first time since she'd walked away from the common table, Emma felt something shift in her chest. She wasn't sure if it was forgiveness yet. But it wasn't anger either. The first rays of spring sunlight streamed through the tall windows of the common table's new location in Camden. The grand opening was hours away, and volunteers moved about like bees in a hive, arranging chairs, setting tables, and checking supplies. Aiden stood near the entrance, dressed simply in a light sweater and jeans. He didn't touch his phone, though it buzzed nonstop in his pocket. He didn't smile either. Not yet, because the one person he wanted to see hadn't come. But then, he saw her. Emma walked slowly down the sidewalk, her loose hair catching the sunlight, her blue dress fluttering softly in the breeze. She carried no bag, no clipboard, just a calm determination in her stride. Aiden's chest tightened. She stepped onto the small stage without ceremony and looked out over the waiting crowd. "I'm not here because of a paycheck," Emma began, her voice steady but soft. "I'm here because this matters." The room fell silent. "Not long ago, I lost my job for giving a hungry child a bowl of soup. I didn't do it for thanks. I didn't expect anyone to notice. But someone did." Her gaze drifted to Aiden. I didn't know who he really was then. Now I do. And he's not just the heir to a company. He's someone who listened, who changed, and who let people like me lead. Aiden stepped forward and took the microphone gently. I didn't come here to build a business, he said, scanning the crowd. I came to find out what we'd forgotten. And I found her. He gestured toward Emma. This project isn't about saving people. It's about standing beside them, letting them rise. The applause started slowly, then grew louder. People stood. A few wiped their eyes. As the crowd clapped, Emma stepped down from the stage and paused in front of Aiden. You didn't have to make space, she murmured. But you did, and you didn't fill it with noise. I'm not trying to be the story anymore, Aiden replied softly. Good, she said, a small smile tugging at her lips. Because now it's our story. Winter came gently to London that year, brushing rooftops with snow and painting the city in soft light. But inside the common table, warmth pulsed like a living thing. 5 locations now thrived across the city, each built on the same principles: dignity, access, and empathy. Emma had become not just the face of the movement, but its soul. One evening, as they prepared for the year-end gratitude dinner, Aiden approached Emma with something in his hand. It wasn't a ring. It was a small silver key on a leather tag. Emma frowned slightly. What's this? A house, Aiden said quietly. Upstate. Modest. Big enough for your brother. Big enough for anyone else who might need it. Her fingers curled around the key as her lips parted. I'm not asking with a ring, Aiden said, his voice trembling. I'm asking with a promise. Let's build this home together. With Liam, with anyone who needs a family. Tears blurred Emma's vision. She dropped to her knees beside him and nodded. Yes, she whispered through her tears. Yes. 3 weeks later, as soft snowflakes drifted down, they stood on the porch of their new home. The smell of fresh paint clung to the walls. Laughter echoed from inside as Liam ran through the rooms, his small footsteps pounding joyfully on wooden floors. Emma leaned against the doorway, her heart full. This, Aiden said softly beside her, is where our next chapter begins. They stood together, no longer broken, no longer lost. Just 2 people, 1 key, and a life they were finally ready to live. If this story moved you, reminded you that healing is real, or renewed your belief in second chances, we invite you to subscribe to Healing Stories. Here, we share real-life journeys of strength, love, and hope. Stories that speak straight to the soul. Thank you for being here. And always remember, no matter how far you fall, there's always a way back to the light. Where are you watching from? Drop a comment below and let us know.